finally, we have the green yellow law gameplay, or as I like to call it, the gauntlet. This is something I did a little bit similar to Gecko Moria way back in the day, where I chose 4 pretty relevant matchups and we just played through all of them, showcasing the decision making, the how to go about this matchup specifically, what you should be doing in certain moments. That way you can see the reason for the decisions and hopefully, grab and, draw information from that. And today, even though there's 4 matchups, I decided to throw in a bonus game 5 for Teach, because I know Teach is a very difficult matchup for a lot of people, and it is a difficult matchup in general, definitely favored for them. So I want to throw in 2 games so that you could see a little bit of the differences that can happen from game to game, even if you don't see optimally. So definitely stick around for the last game or jump around between games that you want to check out anyways. Regardless, I actually used 2 different lists in the 5 games that you'll see today. In the blue-purple matchup, as well as the Teach matchups, I went ahead with this list. This list is actually the most recent iteration and the one I've been, I think, finding the most consistent / most success with. And that is the no restand law build, 11 searcher build, 10 2K build, 4 Hody Jones build, 2 8 drop kit build. I like it a lot, as well as 3 blocker law build, which took me, that kind of, ripped my heart out a little bit, not going at 4 of, but it feels really consistent at 3, surprisingly. The reason for this build is 8 2Ks felt too little. Felt like we could get pressured a lot easily. 10 2Ks has been helping a lot with that defensive pressure, or, ease off the pressure. 2 kit has felt fantastic because in a lot of matchups, I think this card is pretty underrated this meta. Obviously, decks can tech for it. A lot of the purple, straw hat type of decks can tech Gamma Knife for it. But if they don't see it, in pretty much every matchup except for blue-purple, but this card can be good in blue-purple if you find the right timing to play it down. Very powerful card. They don't really have too much of a great way to deal with it. It allows us to stabilize, set up resources, recursion, etc., whatever it may be. Next big thing is 4 Hody Jones. Most lists are on 3. If you're on anything less than 3, I truly think you're missing out on the potential of this card, and because the main reason for this card is, for the purple matchups, but also other matchups, this card is just such a closer because we have access to Cavendish. We pretty much have access to a 12 or 11 Dawn turn, depending on when you're going for game. This card is just so important, and I need to see it because we search so much. We're bot decking consistently. Very easy to bot deck all 3 of our Hodies. I would much rather have the higher likelihood of drawing into it, either, for turn or through life. And 4 has felt very consistent. I've always had it when I need to have it. I would recommend people test at 4. You can get away with 3 for sure, but 4 has felt really good to me. This card is absolutely important. Now, maybe the next biggest thing is the Bonnie and the blocker law. Bonnie, it's not that it's the worst searcher out of these, but I think it's actually the second best searcher out of these 3. But because we have a very high likelihood of going second pretty often if we lose the die roll, I wanted to increase the chances of seeing Kid Killer and having just the 1 card necessary to play for that 2 Dawn. So that way we can shambles on 4 Dawn and have a less of amount of cards we need to see to make that a possibility, if that makes sense. 3 blocker law, like I said, feels kind of gut-wrenching to not go at 4, but this card's felt very good at 3. It's not necessarily the worst out of these 2, but I think Bonnie just has such a strong kind of presence right now because we're able to throw off our opponent's curves, especially against decks that ramp, which is a lot of them right now. We're able to stun their curves as well as stun their really big bodies and pretty much just slow them down to a point where we can just, catch back up or even just overtake a lot of matchups in a lot of decks. So I've loved this, 3-4 split. Also reduces the bricks that we do run in deck by 1, which also feels pretty good. The next list that we run for the rest of the matchups is the, I believe, not that list there, but version 2 here. I got a great naming sense, which is the 9 2K build with 1 restand law. Still would love to incorporate restand law, but there's just no space for me in the deck right now for it. And I think the timings when you can use this card is very niche, but it is a little bit playstyle preferential. If you prefer playing this deck a lot more aggressive, definitely think about including restand law. It's not that I don't like playing the deck aggressively, but I really like to kind of pick and choose my moments, and I use my extra aggression with my blocker law, for instance. But this is the other version of the deck that we decided to go. This one a little bit more normal, 3 Hody Jones, 1 Kid, 8, or rather 12 Searchers, 9 2Ks, and then the 1 Restand Law. So this is the other list. I would say mess around, with ratios as you want, but those are the 2 lists that you'll see in the matchups today. Let me know if you have any questions on the deck list. They're a little bit different than the other video I posted, but, for the most part, all those kind of deck lists, they're like maybe 1 to 4 cards different, each of them. So they're all very, very similar. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump into those 5 games, 4 different matchups, 5 games total. Let me know what you guys think about how those go, and I will catch you guys over there. Peace. So game number 1, we're up against blue-purple Luffy. They chose to go first. They always want to take first from us. Luckily, we have a great 2-Dawn play in Kid and Killer. This is probably the best 2-Dawn play you can get, aside from maybe double Luffy. And here we have the choice. We decide to go with 2-cost beige. The reason we do that is to protect from the mid-game God Thread our units, as well as get one for late game to not have to worry about Big Mom as much. Their turn 1 play is just a gear 2 to ramp to 4 and swing 6. We pretty much always take this hit just because we're looking to get more cards in hand for more pieces, because ideally, if we could have got a Cavendish right there off that life, we would be in a really good spot here. So we're going to be going into our 4 Dawn turn here. Based off the cards we have, we can do 1 search with Kid Killer. Maybe we can get into a Cavendish and then use the remainder 2 Dawn to go into the 2-cost beige. But it looks like instead, I think right here I'm trying to decide, like, do we go triple 1s with Bonnie, beige, and Luffy, or do we just go Kid Killer and beige? And it looks like here we are just going to go with the Luffy. Based off our hand, I would probably grab Bonnie here, so that way we can be able to stun their curve coming up here on the 8 and 9 Dawn turn. And we'll play the Bonnie down for 1 as well. That way we're filling the cost requirement. Because with this, you have to fulfill a cost requirement of 5. And we are able to actually rip the Cavendish off the top life, which kind of a little bit of a high roll, but we do have the rest of the 2 Dawn for the beige. And here we're 5 units wide. We, you know, our board is in a really good spot. We have protection against the Gothard this turn. Don't really have to worry about that. His best bet here is to probably just try to ramp twice. That way he can be on 8 Dawn going into his next turn. He'll swing 7 here. It's a tough choice if I want to go down to 1 life or not. I think it's fine to go down to 1 life here because we don't want to give up our beige this early because we need the protection. So we'll probably just take the life. We could 2k 1k. I'm not really deciding on the Kid Killer effect here. It's strictly on whether or not I'm going to counter. And looks like we do decide to counter 2k 1k. We can give up the Kid Killer because we do have 3 searchers on board. It's not a bad choice here because ideally on this turn as well, we do want to use leader skill to cheat out both our 5-cost Law and our 5-cost Bonnie. So if we took the hit last turn, then we'd be going down to 0 life on this turn, which is a little bit risky. We can play from 0 life occasionally, but it's sometimes not the best play. Now, what I think ends up happening here is he played down the 3-cost Zordro the turn before and left 2 Dawn up. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but Thunder Bagua is something that you might be seeing a lot lately, and especially if your opponent is leaving 2 Dawn up in the mid game, then expect the Thunder Bagua, which will ramp them a Dawn on your turn, putting them on, in this case, that 8 Dawn going into his next turn, or at least 7 Dawn going into 9. So he won't get the leader skill even if he Baguas, but he will be able to ramp with Zorduro, ramp with Bagua, assuming on our turn, and then he'll be at 10 Dawn, which is pretty fast. Now, we just opt to go for the Bonnie search here, see what other pieces we can find. And it is pretty interesting, the position that we're in, because we will have to play down the 1-cost beige to be able to shambles out 2 units. So we can probably overcall the Bonnie here or the Kid Killer, and then we'll have 2 Dawn rested. Yeah, we'll go for the Kid Killer because Bonnie can eat up a swing. We do get a Kid, which is interesting. And I think I actually remember misplaying here. What we should have done is put the Law into life, because with the way that we just went about it, we're going to have to end up overcalling one of our units. Whereas if we put Law into life, we could then just swing with Cavendish 6 at life and then attach 1 Dawn to lead, use leader skill to bounce back one of our characters, play down the Law, and then bounce back one of our other characters, not replay anything, and then just hard play the Bonnie for 5. And that would essentially allow us to not have to overcall one of the units, which we are going to have to do here, unfortunately. Because in order to get Law into rotation, we are going to have to overcall one of these units. Now, he did Thunder Bagua, like I said, which makes perfect sense, but we are just swinging 6s. He's down to 1 life already. We are going to be ending this turn with a pretty strong board, 3 6k units. We're getting a search, and in case people always aren't aware, if you're ever going to go for a search with Luffy or Kid Killer off of a blocker Law, always play the Kid Killer. The reason you do that is, 1, because it feels better to overcall the unit if your board is full in a case where ours is, but most importantly, there's no point in playing the 1-cost over the Kid Killer because the Kid Killer it costs 2 rather than 1. So you would rather have the 1-cost in hand for the next turn. That way you don't have to spend as much Dawn to search for a unit. So you would rather play the Kid Killer here instead of the Luffy. Now, we do end up stunning the Dawn with the Bonnie, which is massive because now he can't have access to all 10 Dawn. And what that does is if he decides to Sanji or Big Mom, it prevents them from leaving 1 Dawn up for Gum Gum Giant or Gear 2, whichever it may be. And that causes him to think, okay, even if I do Lin here / Sanji Lin here, am I still safe to live? The answer could be yes, but the cards in hand that they're going to have to go down to counter out of our turn swings here is going to be pretty high. And what we see here happen is he decides to put the beige into life. I've been seeing that a fair amount lately. People decide to put beige into life over a 5-cost unit. I think either way for us, it's pretty okay because even if they put a 5-cost, mainly most of the time it's Cavendish, we always can just leader skill shambles it out and get 2 free Dawn from what we play. We are in a really good spot here. He's got 2 life, 1 big body on board, Zorduro on board, 5 cards in hand. We're now back up to 2 life, which in this matchup happens pretty consistently because of the Linlin. That's why I wasn't too afraid in going down in life that early, because I know for a fact that if he's going to want to prolong the game to get to the point where his leader skill is live, we're going to be regenning life in a way because of our Beige's ability. So here I'm pretty much deciding, okay, do I go for game? Do I just play 7 cost Law? Do I play 8 cost Kid? I know with the way our board state is currently, 7 cost Law is probably the least likely play that I want to do, because it would require us searching at least once to find a 5 cost, and the chances of finding that 5 cost are probably pretty high. But the reason we don't want to do it is because if I play 1 cost here, our board is going to be full, so I'll have to play the Law over most likely the Kid Killer in order to get those units on the board properly. And it just doesn't feel that great for where I'm at, having to overcall my units, because even though we have 6 cards in hand, we don't exactly have a bunch of counter in hand. Yeah, our board is full, you know, it's looking strong for us, but I don't like wasting resources like that. And that's one of the biggest things with this deck, is knowing how to manage your resources in terms of your life and your board state. You want to make sure that your board state isn't super clogged, because if our board state is super clogged, we're going to start losing out on resources that we would normally have access to. And I think by this time, I finally figured out, you know, what I'm going to do for the turn, which is something you should also do with this deck, is before you start doing anything, just plan out your turn. That way you know how everything is going to play out. You can anticipate what your opponent's reactions are going to be. And if they decide to do something that's a little bit different, such as a misplay, then you can just expand on that. And here we're just going to be swinging 6s, 6 with Bonnie, 6 with Blocker Law. The reason we go 6 with Blocker Law is because we're not in danger of dying on the clapback turn here. And it's just it's a good swing. Knowing when to use your blocker laws to swing is also very important. If people are familiar with red-green law back before set 5, really, then knowing when to swing their blocker laws and not just keep them as blockers is really important, because they should be used as an aggressive tool when needed. And we see here that he countered 1, took 1, and we're able to now pivot with Cavendish, play down 8 cost Kid, get rid of his Zorojuro because we don't want him getting a free Dawn activation for the next turn. And here we can bounce back, most likely just Kid Killer, and use 8 cost Kid skill to replay a Searcher. Essentially, we just developed Kid Killer and we got an additional card to hand. But in this case, actually, playing the Beige is the better choice. That way our whole board is protected. Even if they want to Red Rock our Kid, it will go to the bottom or the top of the life, depending on what we want to... Well, I guess it would go to the top of our life because we don't get to choose like with Linlin. But that's fine, because it means the rest of our board is live. And if he wants to 9-drop Linlin, one of our 5 cost units, well, then we also have the Beige for the protection on that front. So we're looking in a really good spot here. Normally, 8-drop Kid isn't seen as that valuable in this matchup. The reason it's good to play specifically in this moment is because he only has access to 2 attacks. Yes, on this turn, he could play a 9-cost Luffy or an 8-cost Rush Luffy. That is true to get 3 attacks, but that's going to be the maximum amount of value, and the power of those swings is not going to be that excessive. We have a blocker on board. We have 5k counter in hand, which means we can comfortably counter out of these swings. And because we can assume his optimal, maybe not optimal, but the play he would want to do this turn will be 9-cost Sanji plus a Linlin, or maybe a 9-cost Sanji plus a Katakuri, we know he's not going to have excess Dawn to attach. So if we think about it in that way, he's only going to have maximum 1 real attack at our Kid here. It's great for our resource management because we know that we're not going to be going down in that many cards in hand. So it allows us a chance to really just stabilize. And by doing that, we've developed a big body that can start swinging pretty big, which is extremely important in this matchup. Yes, we can develop a lot of 6k attacks very quickly, but also getting 1 to 2 large bodies in this matchup to start pushing those multi-card guards and forcing those events an opportunity for them is huge. Now, we do also top deck a Hody here. Great for us because we already have a Kid established. When you have a Kid established and you can just start spamming Hodies, not really worrying about your life, it feels really good because you know for a fact that you can just use your resources to protect your Kid rather than protecting your life. And because, you know, 8k leader versus 5k leader, it's just a lot better. So we're able to rest the Dawn that he was most likely leaving up for a defensive event, and we can just start poking 6s for where we're at. It's just going to be really good Dawn value for us. He's able to hit a trigger out of life, which is a little bit unfortunate, but we still have 4 attacks left. He's got 3 cards. This game is pretty much locked, and you can expect a fair amount of these games to go this way. I think with how we pilot it, it makes a lot of sense because just resource management, life management, knowing when to swing 6s, knowing when to search versus when to play a little defensively, you just have to be pretty on top of picking and choosing your moments. And mind you, we went second this game. We didn't even get to go first. And optimally, we would want to go first. But it's pretty fine. I think this matchup is definitely favored for us, probably like 60-40, maybe 55-45. Definitely, we like to go first. But if we do go second, like we see, we can still pop off. We pretty much saw everything we needed this game. I wouldn't really say we were lacking anything whatsoever. We even had access to the 7-cost law, but it wasn't the optimal play here for us. So here we're just kind of figuring out the numbers to close it out. And because we swung 6 and he countered out, we can afford to swing 10 here, and then we can just go double 10 with the kid afterwards. And then, you know, if it's pretty much guaranteed game here, but it's just a little funny with how this works out, because he also gets rid of our swing. So even with our blocker law being bot decked here, if he had the counter here for 2k, 2k, 1k, it's still fine for us because we can't die on this turn anyways. We have a beige blocker. He'll have 2 cards in hand at most. Even if he gets rid or rests the beige blocker, we have kid on board. The swings that he's going to need to clear out the kid and also kill us at the same time, it's just not really possible because we also have the counter in hand. Pretty much just puts us in a really good spot. I think this was a really good game to showcase because A, we went second, and we really just kind of showed what you want to do turn by turn. If you guys have any questions when it comes to this game or this matchup in particular, let me know. This is one I've built a lot of confidence with. It's like I said, it's favored for us. Even when he hits the curve that he did, you know, he saw the Bon Clay, he saw Lin. We're just able to go a little bit too fast for them. Next matchup we have is versus Purple Black Luffy. This is going to be another very popular one. I think a lot of people saw the results from this past weekend's regionals, and this leader was popping off. I don't have too much experience with this matchup, but we do always want to go first as well. We're able to see the Luffy turn 1, and he's able to see 2 laws on his turn. So he's finding the pieces that he needs to ramp. We have a very strong hand though. Luffy into Kid Killer. Here I'm probably just going to grab blocker law because it's the only 5 cost we don't have access to. I really prioritize getting the 5 costs that I don't have in rotation. If I'm missing one of them and I don't need a combo piece such as the 2 cost or the 1 cost beige, I'll often just grab the 5 costs that I don't have in rotation, because you will always need to see at least every single one of them. Because of how the matchups work, Bonnie is always great when it comes to throwing off your opponent's curve or stunning a really big or an annoying body. In this case, there's new 6 cost SR Luffy, the one that makes their leader a 7k. That is a very good target for us to stun consistently. Here we just see that he's going to play down Zoro and swing double 5s, one with law, one with leader. We'll take one, counter out the other. That is fine for us, no big deal there. And we're coming into our 5-don turn. Our hand is looking great. We have the Cavendish to combo into the 1 cost beige. And we also have the option of going into the Bonnie or the Law off the beige. And we see that he's at 5-don after ramping with the Zoro, so he'll be going to 7. Not really too worth it for us to Bonnie here, I don't think, because he'll be able to play the Luffy anyways because he'll have 6-don left. So the best play for us to do, that I think we will do, is just trade out one of these searchers here. We get the 6 to life as well, which is, you know, we get a 2k counter. Nice thing with this deck is we're always swinging 6s, so it eats up your opponent's 2ks pretty consistently. I believe that blocker law is the right choice here. We can either shambles that into a search or shambles that into a beige for a little bit more protection. This deck does have access to the 5-drop Black Sanji that does remove 5 cost units. Although I don't know if I was thinking of that as an option when I was playing this game, because I kind of forgot that card existed. So there's a very good chance here that we'll just replay the search, even though we should play the beige. The beige is the right choice, which we do end up doing. That way our Cavendish, most importantly, is protected from a Sanji on this turn. And what we can expect here is either a 7-drop Sanji, a 6-drop Luffy, maybe still a 5-drop Sanji just to bounce one of our units to our life. But of course, starting with 5 here is the play. I believe countering out of this will pretty much always be the right choice, because ideally next turn we can just 7-drop Law and then cheat the Bonnie into our life. So we'll still be at 2 life. It's really nice to have 7-drop Law, and if people aren't familiar, our 7-drop Law is basically an equivalent to a Luffy Taro. You're just cheating out another body and also being able to swing 6 with your leader. It's just so much value on curve, and it's a pretty sizable, you know, 7/9 body. You know, you're asking for a lot of cards when that thing's swinging and sticking on board. Some people might be a little surprised that I just decide to block with the beige and let it go instead of taking the life. The reason I decide to let the beige go is because from here on out, it's not really too much of a worry for the 5-drop Sanji, and they don't really have access to too much other hard removal, such as KO or bot deck. If they want to play the 5-cost Sanji, that's really only good for me, because that means they're not developing a super big attacker. And here for us, it's just a pretty simple, you know, we're going to just go after the rested Zoro because his leader is 7k. We're not going to be able to really swing into that. So the fact that he countered out for the Zoro is pretty big, because it just lets us eat up cards in his hand. What he should do is just let the Zoro die on the first one, and it pretty much negates our second swing since we don't have the extra Dawn to attach and swing to lead. So he's going to protect this. I'm not really too sure why, because it's just eating up his hand. And as we can see, we're just going to play out the Bonnie, stun one of his Dawn. He's going into his 9-don turn, so by stunning the Dawn, it prevents a 9-drop Luffy coming out, which is a very big, annoying body for us to deal with. Bonnie stunning just shuts down this curve. The most we can expect here is maybe an 8-drop Katakuri or In this case, he does have the Sanji, which definitely does hurt. You know, now that we lost our blocker, we have 5 cards in hand, 2 life, and everything here is going to be pretty much 7. Like, he'll probably leave 1 Dawn up, swing 7 with this, swing 7 with leads, swing 7 with Zoro. Oh, he didn't use the leader shield yet, so he could even go 8 on one of those swings. I think what the right choice here is we just end up taking this, because if we don't take this swing, that means he can go pretty tall into our Cavendish and try to just hard clear that. And I would rather take the swing and have the counter to protect my Cavendish rather than my life, because we can cycle out with our searchers, maybe find some blockers or another way to regen life through our 7 cost law. Because yeah, see here, he's going 6 into our Cavendish. There's a good chance he just goes 10 into Cavendish. Like, it's completely possible, which would hurt, but it's not the end of the world because we do still have 2 bodies on board. I don't think it's ever worth countering out of this and dropping 3 cards from hand. You know, we'd go down to, in our case here, we go down to 2 cards in hand. That just doesn't feel good, because from there he can just completely go at our board, chip away at our resources, which is what we're actually going to end up doing to him here. He decided to counter out of Zoro on the last turn 2 times with 2Ks, so we know that his counter in hand and 2K availability is going to be pretty low. We have access to our 7 cost law on the board here, so we can afford to go into this Luffy character with almost a guarantee of clearing it, because he also didn't leave a Dawn up for Giant. One thing to make note of if you're playing this matchup, because the character Luffy and the leader Luffy are both 7k, unless you're able to push for lethal, you should always just go for pushing the character clear over the leader clear, probably like 90% of the time, because then you won't have to worry about the reoccurring character and the leader buff. Because in this scenario as well, he just wants to eat cards from his life to just replenish his hand. So instead of doing that, we can chip away at his hand by going after his board. Either he lets the valuable card go, or he lets his hand go, and now he's down to 1 card in life, which just lets us push, you know, for very cheap numbers hereafter, just going for the Luffy. It's just a matter of figuring out what the right numbers are. Do we go 9 to guarantee the clear? Do we go 7 just to equal out, and maybe if he has 1 card in hand? I decided to go 8 here. A little bit of a risky number, but because it seemed like he gave us 3 1Ks on that last swing, so we know that chance he has a 2K is really low. So I can kind of afford to go for that, you know, 1K over. And the main reason is because I also wanted to have 6 Dawn up specifically for this play, so we could play the Bonnie, play the Beige, use leader skill. That way we can cheat out the Law and the 2-cost Beige all in 1 turn. Yes, we are going down to 0 life, but we established 2 blockers. So the chances of him being able to kill us on this turn is fairly low. Let's say theoretically he just so happened to have 2 Usahachis in hand, which we know is probably not going to be the case, because A, he'd have to top deck 1, and B, he would have used it last turn to counter out and protect a unit anyways. So we know that's not really going to be the case, but he'll swing 7/7 here, which is fine for us. You could argue maybe I could have blocked the first swing with a 2-cost Beige, but I didn't want to open up my characters to being KO'd through another potential Sanji. So we decided to counter out of the first one, although we could have blocked and 2K'd with our blocker law, and that way we know we can just eat the second swing with our 2-cost Beige. But because this card is also a threat, it's something you have to be aware of, which is this Rush Luffy, which is, he can't restand on this turn because he didn't have the Dawn available, but being able to have that extra 7k swing is pretty scary. So here, I'm surprised I'm going for game. Actually, we can't just go for game. His hand count was super low, so we can just push for pretty easy numbers. 1 card in hand, start with 5. We still have 4 attacks, 3 life, and then just go 7/7. It's pretty much mathematically impossible. So I think this was a pretty good game to showcase, because he pretty much hit his stride. The only thing he didn't do was go first. We were able to go first instead, which I'm fairly certain they want to do. But we were just able to curve out, you know, find our searchers in the early game, go into Cavendish, decide to go into blocker law instead of Bonnie, because stunning their 7 Dawn turn doesn't really mean much. They were able to find the Luffy, able to find, you know, the secret rare Luffy as well as the SR Luffy, able to find Sanji, double search turn 1. So they found their pieces for sure. But I think we were just able to, you know, with our defenses through our blockers, as well as, you know, swarming up the board through our 5 costs and our 7-drop law, just able to kind of whittle out the resources and just go for almost a 1-turn kill with him being at 3 life. So let me know if you guys have any questions with this matchup. This is one that I'm going to be getting a lot more practice with as well, but it's kind of to be expected. But your most popular matchups, if you go to a regional, probably expect blue-purple Luffy, green-purple Luffy, and purple-black Luffy. Probably going to be the 3 most common decks that you will play against. And the next matchup that we have is versus Yamato. I've only played this matchup a couple of times, and I'm still trying to figure out perfectly how to play it, but it is a very scary matchup, which Yamato, when versus 4 life or less leaders, is known to be a pretty scary matchup, because you're going to be going down in life very, very quickly. And especially with a leader like ours, where we also eat our own life, it can get a little bit dicey if we're not able to stabilize. Now, a way we can stabilize in this matchup is through 8-drop Kid and potentially recurring our 7-drop laws to regain life. But 8-drop Kid is really the best option, because they don't have a great way to clear it unless they by some chance run like 9-drop Shanks or something like that. 8-drop Kid is going to be really good for us to stabilize, you know, have a good defensive capability. The thing that sucks for us in this matchup is this card right here. And I'm just going to pause for a second. This card is very, very difficult for us to handle in this matchup because of what we just saw, where he's able to clear our immediate unit. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's not like we could cheat out a beige on that turn. It's not like we could even play beige. If we play beige, it's going to get popped anyways. So this card makes this matchup very difficult because it can clear a 5 cost if we have 3 or more life, which on the turn that the curve this is going, like I said, we want to go first. We went second. There's going to be no way for us to get around this. So that unit is always going to be popped pretty much every single time, which means we won't be able to get that for Dawn Shambles. Pretty unfortunate, but it's a very strong play for them. Not really a way for us to get around it aside from just not playing anything out. But I would rather play out a search or another potential unit in case we don't have this happen. That way we can kind of accelerate our game plan if we need to. So we'll go ahead and continue here. He's swinging 5. It's tough to say whether or not taking this 5 is the right or the wrong choice. It is just a simple 1k counter. But we do go down to 2 life very quickly, which means we'll be going down to even further life pretty quickly. But you can make the argument that if we take the 5k here and just eat the 2 life, we'll have access to more cards, which feels nice. And it doesn't feel as bad if he ends up playing banished units later on, which gives his leader banish, because we'll end up losing less cards. It's something to think about. Like I said, I haven't perfectly, you know, figured out this matchup, but here we just kind of have Bonnie to go for search. I think this turn we kind of have to take it low key, just go with some searches. I think taking Cavendish here is probably the right choice. The reason I was contemplating on the Bonnie is most likely to play on my 6-Dawn turn just to stun his 7-Dawn so he can't go into Hody and just, you know, apply even more aggression. That's something to think about with Bonnie, especially, is playing it on proper curves to shut down your opponent's curve. Very, very important. Now, yet again, we see another one of, I don't even know the name of the unit, but he pops our 2-cost beige. Our Bonnie is off the board. We got 0 characters on board. He's swinging 6 double attack. The reason I'm going to counter out of this one is because I know I'm leader scaling next turn, so we're going to go down to 3 life. But something to think about is if we took the double attack last turn, we'd no longer be able to get punished by this card since the opponent has to be at 3 or more life. Something to make note of for the future. Probably, you know, less than that. I'll learn there. But yeah, so he's got the search going. He found the OP11 Ezo, the 2k that rests as well. So we go into our 6-Dawn turn. We got 4 life. We got 5 cards in hand. It's almost like we've done absolutely nothing so far. Luckily, we've been able to get searchers, so we've been trading out cards. So we go Cavendish, Luffy. I'm going to go into beige here and probably just go into... We might go into the Law to cycle the searcher because I want more resources for where we're at in the game right now. This might be the wrong choice, swinging into this unit, because it pretty much just gave him a blocker. I think swinging life there would have been the better choice. And if he wants to use leader skill to get that thing active to start swinging, I think I'd rather let him do that and apply the 2 Dawn. Going for the hard clear, just giving him the free blocker probably isn't the right choice. And what we do end up doing here is just cycling the Luffy. I am taking a bit of a risk on him not having another one of these 3-cost units because we are still at 3 life. So we could easily get punished here. And if we lose Cavendish on this turn, the chances of us winning this game just decrease astronomically. Even if he plays a Hody here, we're not in a fantastic spot. Hody would rest probably just our Law and our Cavendish, and he could just swing 10 at our Cavendish by using leader skill to attach it onto Hody. Cavendish would die, swing 5 at life, then I would have to contemplate giving up another card. We'd just be in a really bad spot. But luckily here, I believe he doesn't have access to the Hody. He's just going to end up swinging 5 at life, most likely. Swinging 7 at life. So we could block 2k here, or we could just take it. I think I'm like almost partial to just taking it because we know on the next turn we have 7-cost Law. So we can go into our Bonnie, you know, through 7-cost Law and either just heal that one or play it out and we'll be at 1 life with also probably another blocker, because since we still have Cavendish on board, we can restand 2 Dawn, play out a beige, something like that. Interesting play for him here. He decides, you know, swing 7 with leader and then play out the Momonosuke SR, heal 1, which is pretty powerful in this deck, having access to a blocker and a healer at the same time. But our hand, you know, we've kind of reached a pretty good point. We got Cavendish on board, we got Law on board, we have searchers in rotation, we have access to 7-drop Law in our hand. We have pretty good options this turn. We can go into 5-drop Law, we can go into 5-drop Bonnie, and start really applying some board presence as well as some pressure to their life. Because one thing about Yamato is you can technically starve them out of resources. It's not like they're a crazy kind of resource generating deck. I don't even consider them too much of an aggro deck. Their leaders is just so strong that it forces you to play a little bit conservatively or just lean into, you know, eating your life really quickly. It's pretty interesting. Now, some people might be wondering why I'm deciding to go Bonnie here over the Kid and Killer. Unless I leave the Bonnie on the board to soak up an attack, it's not really too big of a difference. Unless obviously you run the events where you can then trash the Kid and Killer to reset an event, assuming it's 6 on board. But in the scenario where if I'm not going to bounce back Bonnie, I'm going to leave it on the board. That way you can soak up an attack. Because the nice thing about Bonnie and being able to play it strategically, knowing when to use Bonnie versus other searchers so that you can soak up a hit instead of taking it to life is very important. I don't know if we were able to showcase it in the blue-purple or the purple-black matchup, but oftentimes being able to have the Bonnie on turn 1, so that way you can search with it on turn 2 and just eat up a leader swing, since blue-purple doesn't play any cheap bodies on Dawn 1 or 2, you're always going to eat that leader swing. So Bonnie at times is very good defensively, because if they ignore it, then you can also just start regenning more cards in hand, which is great. But here, like I said, it didn't really matter, Kid Killer, Bonnie, same thing, because we just would have ended up bouncing back either of them. The other thing is we might have played the Bonnie because he knew we had the Bonnie in hand, but not the Kid Killer. So it also just gives them less information to think about, being able to just, use the units that they know we have and play them out that way, instead of them finding out even more information on the cards we have in hand, since we do bounce back, our board to our hand and whatnot. But in the spot we're in right now, we are in a really good spot. We got 3 6K bodies on board, 7-drop law. We got the beige on board for protection. We have a healthy hand, 7 cards in life. And the nice thing, because we're at 1 life, his leader skill at this point is negligible, because it's not like he can do 2 damage when we're only at 1 life. So sometimes going down to 1 life is better than staying at 2 life, or even, better than staying at 2 life, because the double attack is just negated. It's going to be 1 damage no matter what, which is fine. So he goes for the Hiyori here. Also plays down the Ezo in order to rest our beige and then just hard clear it, which is fine. But by him doing that play also tells me that the card quality in his hand is probably pretty low. He's also got the Banish here, which is, that's fine as well. One of the new starter deck 28 cards. Here, very simple for us. We can just block 2K. We don't have to eat this Banish. Being able to have this blocker on board is pretty helpful for us. And now he's really in a bad spot. 2 life. He can swing 5 here again. We can just give a 1K and counter. I think you could argue he could have attached the 2 Dawn to the new Ezo to become a blocker, but because we know that card exists, we also have the 1-drop Scratch Minapu, and that can rest a 2 cost or less. So even if he played that down, we'd be able to rest it for pretty much free. It's just a matter here now. Do we go for game? We got 5 attacks. We could try for game. There's no real reason to go into his board, since they're very cheap units. It would be bad trades on our part, because we're giving him pretty much free blocks. So there's only going to life here. And by going to life here, we'll probably force him to use the Momonosuke as a blocker and die, therefore also eating a potential threat on board. I'm sure right now it's just a matter of kind of figuring out the math. One thing which maybe we will showcase here is, with our leader and having Cavendish on board, you can reset Dawn very freely in this game, or at least with this deck. We could go double Luffy Searcher, we could go Kid Killer once, and get pretty much two free searches or 1 free search, with our Cavendish then resetting the Dawn. The other thing that is a pretty common play is, if you're ever going for lethal and you don't want to spend extra Dawn to reset with Cavendish, attach 2 Dawn to any of your characters attacking before Cavendish, and then attach 1 Dawn to leader, and just bounce back the character that you attach the 2 Dawn to. Because when a character is removed from the board, the Dawn that is attached to them resets as rested Dawn, therefore setting Cavendish as live. Just something to think about in terms of getting more access to Dawn. It gives you pretty much 2 extra Dawn for the turn to increase your lethal numbers. Something to think about. And here we just decided to, I think we double Luffy searched, and we're just going to swing 6 with Cavendish. Now, because he got the Hikinojo, I think it's important for us to just pivot here and go for game, because we do have access to the Restand Law, which we searched off one of the Luffys, which is great. My most recent list doesn't have Restand Law, but that doesn't mean it's not a card that you can't run. And by having the Restand Law here, it gives us another 8K swing, but also gives us 2 extra Dawn to go for lethal. It's pretty much guaranteed lethal for us here. He has 1 blocker and 1 life, but because we know his card quality in hand is really low, we can pretty much just, go for game here. At the best he can do here, I think it's mathematically impossible, because we can just swing 7, guarantee the hit, swing 8, most likely guarantee the hit, and then swing 9, and it's clear. So we lock this game out, able to stabilize, which is a very important thing, not even needing 8-drop Kid. But because he didn't see the aggressiveness of his deck through the 6-cost Momonosuke, which is a very powerful unit, even in this matchup, because it has access to rush, it can get a little bit overwhelming. We kind of lucked out that they weren't able to see that. If they were able to see that, then having our chump blockers as well as our blocker law being able to soak up those aggressive hits would be very important. Like I said, though, still figuring out this matchup in terms of how to navigate it properly. but I don't think it's an unwinnable matchup, especially because we have better resource generation. It's just a matter of getting to that stabilization to start recurring those resources properly, as well as applying pressure. And unfortunately for him, his last couple of life there or whatever ended up being the unit that he probably wanted to see a little bit earlier. But if you have any questions about this matchup as well, or any ways that you found success in this matchup, let me know in the comments, because honestly, I'm looking to learn how to improve that matchup for myself, and maybe we can kind of help some other people as well. And from there, we'll go into our last matchup of the video. So what I decided to do for this last matchup is, because I know it's probably a matchup that if you're playing this deck, you are probably scared of, is Black Teach. So I decided to showcase 2 games from 2 different players. That way we can kind of see the maybe different lines of thought process. And in this matchup, we also want to go first, but they got selected to choose, so they decide to go first. But we have a very powerful opening turn here, especially because we were able to draw into Hody Jones. Hody is absolutely necessary in this matchup, because if they negate on plays, he still has access to rush. And through our leader skill, we can always just swing him, bounce him back, and replay him again to always get that additional attack without worried about, taking the life or getting stunned with a trigger or stunned with a 10 drop. And what we can see here in the opening turns is 2 cost Kid Killer able to grab just a Searcher Bonnie, because it's got an activate main not on play, which is nice. And he decides to just go Lafitte full lead, pretty standard opening. Here we can crash in our Kid Killer. In case people are wondering, always play your Searchers out in this matchup, because if I'm just going to pause here really quickly because that's very important. Always play your Searchers out in this matchup, because if he plays Doc Qs or Lafitte's, we need our little bodies to just trade into them. This isn't going to be a matchup where we can abuse leader skill or anything like that. So often meeting the 5 cost requirement to do things is not going to be the importance. The importance in this matchup is using our Searchers when they're live, aka pretty much like turn 1, maybe turn 2, and then just playing down 5 cost bodies into Hody Jones. We just need to see Hody Jones, as well as try to get as wide as possible. Maybe you see 2 cost base here and there to provide protection and whatnot. But playing your little guys, even if you're not getting the search with them, is important, because they can become attackers even in the late game. All right, we'll go ahead and resume here. Now, for this guy in particular, he messed up by not using leader skill on this turn going into our Fordon turn, because now we're able to actually just completely accelerate our game plan by having access to our leader skill. So we can go ahead and bounce back Kid and Killer, play out Law, bounce back Bonnie, and play out Beige. That way Law is protected. Some people might ask, why don't you just go into the Bonnie on this turn to stun the Dawn? We could, because it would shut off the Kuzan. But the other thing is, he would still have Fordon access, so he could go into Finger Pistol or into Burgess. And because one of those options has the potential to remove the 5 cost that we just played, I would rather go into Law and Beige. That way I know my Law is going to stick around for another turn. I think that's just a better play, because even if he goes into the Kuzan on this turn, the 5 drop, not the 6 drop, 5 drop, that's not going to be really too threatening to me, at least not at this moment. And also in this case, we just get the free block, because if he's going to tap out on his Dawn, we just get the free block with Law anyways. So I think going to Law here is the right choice overall. And yeah, we saw him search out the black hole the turn before, so he's just going to black hole the Beige, which is fine. And he plays down a Stronger here as well, kind of indicating to us that he's trying to set up for a future turn. And he didn't make mistakes, so he decides to use leader skill on the last one. Some people might be asking as well here, why are you swinging with Blocker Law? It's a blocker. Well, normally I say to people, you have to be careful when you swing with this card in particular, but in this matchup, there's no reason to never not swing Blocker Law, because if you swing with leader and he gets a trigger out of life and your Blocker Law dies without doing anything, that is going to feel very bad. So always swing your units before your leader in this matchup, and always just go for the swing with your Blocker Law, unless you really can't afford to give up your blocker. But in this case, he took the 6, great for us. Kind of tells me that, hey, maybe his counter in hand isn't too great. He played down the Stronger, so he might be in a pretty rough spot. You're able to swing 6 with leader, get another attack, and just play a Bonnie down. We're not stunning Dawn or anything like that, but we are just getting bodies down on the board, which is the most important thing. Some people might also ask, why don't you just play the 2 cost Kid and the 3 drop Bonnie, get a little bit wider? Well, the reason for that is because I'd rather have a body that's going to be asking for a little bit harder or more cards from hand to counter out, because he's already down to 2 life. I'd rather keep up the threat of being able to swing, because I know he can't clear both of these units on this next turn anyways, aka 7 on turn. And we see him use the Stronger and the 7 drop Teach to get rid of our Blocker Law, which sucks, but it's fine. We still have 2 attackers on board. Swing 6 with Bonnie, he counters out. Swing 6 with lead, he has to take, which means we can go 7 drop Hody here, and we know he's going to have to take. If he's not going to counter a 6, he's not going to counter an 8. Something to make note of. This game is pretty much locked in a way. I wouldn't even say he didn't see what he needed to see. It really was just because he didn't shut off our forward on turn. We were just able to go very fast against him. Even by going Kuzan here, I mean, he's not really going to be doing much. He could go Van Augur, use Teach, clear our Bonnie. And let's say theoretically, because he doesn't do it, but let's say theoretically, he were to play 2 blockers here, we have access to 3 attacks next turn. And because we know that he's been eating 6k swings, his counter power in hand is probably very low. So what we would do going into next turn, because he's at 0 life, we can very easily just start off with probably a 7k swing with leader, 8k swing with Hody, use leader skill, bounce Hody back to hand, and then go 9k with Hody. And that should just close out the game. I mean, even with 2 blockers, he's at 0 life. I don't think mathematically he would even have the cards. Well, he could have the card quantity in hand to get out of that, but we know his card quality is really low. Now, I don't think this guy was necessarily the best player because he did miss the timing on our 4-down turn. And what you'll see here, he actually just ends up going 9k into our Hody. I mean, maybe he was just basically conceding the game at that point because that's just an easy counter and he's got no defense up whatsoever. So it's all right. I mean, he'll dish the card, shut off our on plays. I could just attach all 10 Don here and just go for game, but you know, I knew we had it locked away anyway, so I just kind of wanted to do, you know, standard, you know, practice plays, you know, just make sure it's ingrained on what to do properly in the event that he could counter out here if he blockered up. Quick little teach game, you know, nothing too crazy in terms of that game, but something to make note of is if they don't stun your turn like that, even if you're going first, you can accelerate pretty quickly and kind of take over the game. I mean, Teach doesn't like getting swarmed, so if we're able to swarm with our 5 cause, get Hody in position, just start going at life. The only times you really want to go at board is with your little guys into their little guys. Other than that, unless it's like a really important Van Augur to clear, you pretty much just want to go life because we don't want this game to go long whatsoever. Now we do have the second teach game, like I mentioned. And what we'll see here is he'll end up choosing to go first again. Of course, we don't get the showcase going first, but you know, it is what it is. I decided to mulligan this hand. And real quickly, with law hands, if you see a hand like this, it's not worth keeping. Even though we have access to a searcher, we have access to a Bonnie, we have access to a 7-drop, the reason that we don't want to keep a hand like this, and even if I were to have, let's say 2 other searchers in this, we don't have access to enough pieces in our early game, and we're not going to have enough turns by the time we need to get to, you know, our pivotal turns such as 5, 6, 7, or 8 Dawn to do enough searches to find those combo pieces in time. So a hand like this, I will mulligan because I would rather have more actual combo pieces than the ability to find those combo pieces. If this hand had 3 searches, I would mulligan it because we're not going to have access to enough time to be able to find the pieces that we need to fill in those kind of gaps. Just something to make note of as well. This hand's probably worse than the last one, so it's a little funny, but we do fix it by top decking a searcher, and that's why we run 11. Because, you know, we run 11 searches, that way we can find, you know, pretty good ample hits. I'll showcase, or I expect the deck list to be showcased at the start of this. I think for the videos that we've showed, it's probably 2 different deck lists, but 11 to 12 searchers, you know, definitely what you should be aiming for. I think 10 is too little. 11 to 12 is what you want to be going for. And we're just able to play down the Kid Killer. He's able to find Luffy in the stage as well. You know, pretty similar to what we saw last game. Standard plays, swing 5, which is fine. And we found the Cavendish, you know, we found our pieces, but this guy was a little bit smarter, decided to ditch for leader skill on this turn. If he didn't, this game would have been over. We could have gone into Bonnie and then go into Cavendish. Cavendish would restand to Dawn, go into Beige. We would have protection. We'd have a big body on boards, and we'd be chilling. But instead, he decides to ditch for lead, which is the right play. Able to swing 5, he takes. We have access to Bonnie, so we can get the search anyways, and we can play Beige. So our searches are protected by any effects. Bonnie's going to soak up an attack from our life, which is cool too. Didn't really expect that to live. And he's just going to go Kuzan play Van Augur. Because we see Van Augur coming out here, we can probably expect that removal is going to be coming up on the next turn, which most likely indicates a 7-cost Teach. That is very annoying for us because now they do have access to that pretty powerful curve of setting up a reducer going into Teach. Anything we play on this turn, normally, pretty much for any deck, would be removed unless there's a way to either have protection through Beige or cost increase if your deck does that. Now, the cool thing here, which is a little high rolly, but it can happen quite often, is I did opt to just blind leader skill. The reason because is there's no reason to just leave this Kid Killer on the board rested. Or actually not rested, but on the board. I'd rather just have it back in hand to counter. And if we are able to hit something out of life, great. Or just, you know, up in general. And we are able to get the Bonnie. Not the on play, but getting just another body is really, really powerful here. He's got the 7-drop. Clears our Beige, kind of unfortunate, which means the rest of our units are open to removal, but we don't have to worry about it this turn because, you know, he's tapped out on Dawn. So we're able to counter out 5 here. Yeah, he doesn't swing the Van Augur, which is a little bit interesting to me. I think swinging Van Augur would be the right choice, but he probably didn't want to expose it to being removed. That way he can clear another unit with a combo of Van Augur and Teach on this next turn. What we are going to end up doing on our 8 Dawn turn here is we just need to get wide. He's down to 3 life, 5 cards in hand. You know, he's obviously dishing cards for leader skill as he should be. The important thing for us here is to just get wide as much as we can. That way he can't reach 10 Don safely. Yes, they stole our first curve, which sucks for us, but that also means they're getting to 10 drop a turn later. So if we can afford to get wider sooner rather than later, we're going to be in a really good spot. Just keep up constant aggression. Now, I did opt to play the 3-cost Bonnie before swinging. The reason is so I can have Cavendish live. Having that Dawn reset so we can go 6, 6, 7 just really puts on the pressure. We established 2 more units as well. And the reason Bonnie, even if I if I had access to 2-cost base here, I'd probably go 5, 6, 6. But Bonnie's a really good target to play here because with 1 Dawn attached, we can start pressuring life. So very, very powerful, although unfortunately the units we just cleared, or that we just played, are cleared. Now, he also kind of misplayed. I think he should have just strictly used the effects of the Van Augur and Teach to get rid of our Cavendish, because that's just giving us extra Dawn, which is a little bit dangerous. He probably thought that he could afford to clear the Cavendish for 8, but I'm always going to counter out of that because he's always giving us extra Dawn and extra value. We can't go for game this turn. It's not possible. He established 2 blockers, which that blocker is very powerful for the deck. Cheap 1 cost 2k blocker, so it's a 2k, you know, in your hand as well. He's got 2 blockers, 1 life. We only got 3 attacks, so it's impossible to go for game here. In my mind, what we can afford to do is, and I think my sequencing here is actually a little bit incorrect because we decided to go for 8. It worked out because he decided to end up blocking this, but we shouldn't have gone for 8 there. We should have gone for less. The reason I was going for 8 is to hopefully get him to use the blockers, or at least cards from hand potentially. And we're just actually going to do the exact same play as last turn. Luckily, we have access to it, but even if we didn't have access to the Law and the Bonnie, any attackers that would be able to just swing at all, you would be looking to play on this turn. It's really nice that the units we are playing on this turn are blockers, so we don't have to worry about dying on the clapback. But he's got low cards in hand. He's got low life. So just getting as wide as possible on this turn to close out on the follow-up turn is the priority. So we can do the exact same play, you know, swing, in this case, 8, 6, 7. Like I said, the numbers were a little bit jumbled on this, but pretty much what we wanted to have happen ended up happening anyways. Because he can't go for board here, it's not possible for him to clear all of our units, and it's not possible for him to essentially, you know, push for game either because we do have 2 blockers and 2 life. So he'll play the 10-cost Teach here. Doesn't really matter for us. Yeah, he just concedes here because we have too many attacks. We have counter if we need to, so he's not going to be able to clear anything on our board whatsoever. Just a really good position for us, really good game. And we didn't even have access to Hody Jones, which is something to make note of. If you don't have access to Hody Jones, which in this matchup, you should always mulligan for Hody Jones. Even if your hand is good, this card is so important in this matchup, you should just mulligan your hand to hopefully get Hody Jones, which is why in the list that you see in this game, I run 4 of. The list that you saw in the first 3 matchups, I was on 3 of. Since then, I'll showcase both of the lists in case you're seeing this now. I'll give a spiel at the start that shows both lists that we used today. But for Hody Jones, some people obviously think that's too many. I've played so many games with this deck. I need to see Hody Jones in so many matchups. And because Purple Luffy and decks like it are so common, Hody Jones just almost wins you those games sometimes just outright if they aren't playing around it properly. But definitely want to mulligan it for this matchup here. And that pretty much is all 5 of the games that we have today. Now, if you have any questions on piloting the deck or specific reasons I did certain actions, definitely let me know in the comments. I would say I'm very comfortable with this deck in pretty much all matchups. Not that all matchups are favorable for us, but just being able to know the different lines and the routes that you should do, very important. Hopefully some of you guys were able to see the insights on, you know, the reasons behind different certain plays. Some of the most important things to make note of is when you're searching cards that you need to get for specific moments, such as your combo pieces or cards that you need to be playing later. Very important to note of, as well as when to use leader skill, also very important. Sometimes with this deck, you just need to bounce back a character to free up space. Like I said before, space on the board is extremely important to make note of. Your board can easily get over congested, which causes you to start overplaying units, and you're going down in resources. Managing your board space, very important. Managing your life, knowing when to use leader skill and not to use leader skill, also very important. Hopefully you guys were able to draw something from this with a little bit of gameplay. I prefer playing with actual cards, so I'm not a huge fan of playing on the sim, but I had some people ask me to do sim gameplay because you can also see my hand in the choices and the reason for the choices that I'm making, have access to, you know, pretty much all that information. I think is very good, very helpful to learn. So yeah, if I would recommend people try to learn this deck. It does take a lot of time investment. It's not the easiest deck to learn, but it's probably the most fun deck I've ever played. And my, you know, second deck ever was Red Green Law. Still love that deck, but just a little phased out right now, unfortunately. But yeah, keep the comments coming, guys. Really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely feel free to drop a like, drop a sub, whatever it may be. And stay tuned for more gameplay. Let me know if there's any other decks that you guys want to see showcased or matchups for this deck specifically. I'm probably going to be focusing in the majority of my, whatever season we're in for, regionals and whatnot with green, yellow, law. But I'm pretty versed in, almost any deck that you can think of. So if you want to see specific gameplay for those, let me know. And yeah, aside from that, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll catch you later. Peace.